captioning box at the bottom of your screen. So you can go ahead and click it to enable live captioning. And thank you to Deb from Purple Communications for being here today with us to provide this service. As you join, we'll be putting you on mute. I'm going to go ahead and unmute folks at the end again when we have a time for question and answers. Some details just about Zoom webinars in general. You have listening privileges only. Chat is enabled now. We've actually made that enabled. You can chat with panelists and attendees. You can only chat with panelists or other attendees when allowed. When called upon, I will unmute you. You'll speak and we'll remute you. So at the end, when we do question and answer, go ahead and raise your hand and you can use that function so that I know that folks have questions, or you are welcome to type them into the chat. And here are some details about what you should be seeing right now. Okay, so before we get started and do introductions, we'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Currently, I'm sitting on the traditional land of the Duwamish and Coastal Salish people. Folks may be at different locations themselves. There is a website where you can find out whose land that you are currently sitting on. It's native.land/ca. And I'll go ahead and put that information in the chat as well. We think it's important to honor the land itself as well as the relatives past and present who currently still steward this land and recognize that we are guests here. And so as we continue to work with the government, we want to be mindful of what that relationship has meant and how we can continue to promote solutions and help support the community. So if you're interested in learning more about the Duwamish tribe and you also are sitting there, DuwamishTribe.org is a great place to visit to figure out ways that you can support that community as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just do my own welcome and introduction. We will have folks introduce themselves at the end during the question and answer section so we can get to know who is here. My name is Ali Jerkovich. I use she, her pronouns. I am a program manager with King County Department of Community and Human Services, DCHS. Primary body of work is on the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, VSHSL. It's important when we're using a captioner to try not to use acronyms too much, and also when we're talking with folks. And so if there are things that I'm saying that don't make sense, go ahead and just message me in the chat and I'll do my best to walk back and explain. I am the program manager in partnership with my colleague Gretchen Bruce, who will be joining us a bit later. On this specific investment. And so if you have questions, I'll be the one that you will be sending emails to, etc. And Gretchen has just joined us. So Gretchen, I'm actually going to have you introduce yourself.
Am I viewable and hearable now?
You are here. You are hearable. I don't know if you are viewable. I don't see your screen.
Okay. Oh, start video. There we are. My name is Gretchen Bruce. I use pronouns she, her. I am with the King County Veterans Program. My video will not start. So yes, I'm with the King County Veterans Program, contract manager for the Veterans portfolio of contracts funded through the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. Very excited to work with Ali for the purposes of combining the veteran cultural competency with the child care cultural competency that she has been shepherding through the task force. So this is an exciting marriage of the combined arms nature that we are trying to do through the levy, is really bringing multiple viewpoints together to create a better whole of system connections. Appreciate being here, and I look forward to hearing from you. My apologies for arriving late. My boss scheduled a meeting that went a little bit long and I lost track. You know how that goes.
No problem, Gretchen. We're happy to have you. So here's a brief agenda of what we'll be covering today. For folks who haven't attended a bidders conference before, the intent of the bidders conference is to provide context for the request for proposal that we recently announced, to have a space for folks to ask questions that we can answer publicly in this space. Because of the open procurement process, we're unable to answer individual questions. And so this being a public meeting, we will be recording it and then posting it on the ZoomGrants platform. So really this is a chance to talk to us in a space that's less formal than an email that you will receive from me that says something akin to, it's an open procurement process, and so you will be receiving a response to this compiled with other responses that will be loaded onto ZoomGrants. And it's also a chance for Gretchen and I to talk through the process of how we came to the RFP itself a bit more. We also know that the procurement process for the government can be convoluted and confusing. And so part of our job is also to provide transparency and in some ways sort of translate the government language into a way that's relatable to the community. So we're going to be talking briefly about what is the Veteran Seniors and Human Services Levy. I'm going to have Gretchen speak a bit to the overview of the strategy itself as written into the implementation plan. And then we're going to talk about the actual RFP itself, so the request for proposal or RFP. We also will be touching on the fact that we do have technical assistance available for anyone who's interested in applying for the RFP, as long as you meet the requirements that we will be going over today. And then we'll talk about the ZoomGrants platform and then have time for question and answer. Gretchen, did I miss anything?
No, that's, yep, questions and answers. So when things matter to you, we'll be here to answer them for you.
Great. So what is the Veteran Seniors Human Services Levy? We're about 2 years into this now, and so folks are probably familiar, so we won't spend too much time talking about this, but just a brief overview. The levy was passed by King County voters in 2017. It is a 6-year property tax levy. The implementation plan itself passed in 2018 and recognizes 5 result areas for 3 of our priority populations. So we have the veterans, service members, and families. We have seniors, who include folks who are 55 and older and their caregivers. And then the vulnerable populations, which our team is actually named the resilient communities to better represent the actual resilience of the communities that we are supporting. The 5 result areas for those priority populations you can see listed below are housing stability, financial stability, social engagement, healthy living, and service system access and improvement. So this strategy itself, with a marker FS, is a financial stability strategy. The guiding principles of the levy are this combined arms approach, like what Gretchen was talking about using our own unique expertise in different communities and making sure that we're doing the best thing we can to support everyone rather than continuing to be siloed. To foster belonging, to make sure that folks have access to spaces where they belong. And a community of service, to make sure that we are connecting providers to one another. And probably the guiding star for all of us in the levy work has been this question of what can only the VSHSL do? And what we mean by that is this is a really unique opportunity and a unique funding stream where we have a level of flexibility that other funding doesn't necessarily have. And so we see it as our role to fill in the gaps in the work that the community is doing. If there are, for example, federal or state pass-through funding that has restrictions about the types of individuals who can be served or the types of services that can be served, our job is to help supplement that and look at where the need is and make sure that we are prioritizing the folks who are furthest from those opportunities. And so when we think about what can only the levy do, particularly in the context of this strategy, is what's the amount of flexibility we can continue to provide to childcare providers as well as individuals seeking childcare that might not be available in other spaces. The cornerstone of anything we are doing at King County is around equity and social justice, particularly around racial justice. And this leads perfectly from the what can only VSHSL do when we think about who are the priority populations that we are trying to support. And that our overarching goal and the county's goal as listed is to ensure that all people, regardless of who they are and where they live, have the opportunity to thrive with full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources. Gretchen, strategy FS3B. Would you like to talk a bit about how this came to be?
Sure. As a brief bit of history, what's exciting to me about the levy, I've been involved in human services for quite a long time, and the levy in whole really did an extraordinary job from what I've seen of getting into community and listening and hearing from community members, even as we were planning to put this on the ballot, as we were planning which strategies would be funded, and as we were planning how to actually roll out an RFP like this. I have rarely seen this kind of community engagement in my years of human services. So one of the things that we heard through all of this community engagement is that there are, a veteran, as they are exiting and reintegrating into civilian life, they have opportunities of continuing their education through the GI Bill, through other grants and opportunities, but some of the things that happen in the background make it hard and difficult for them to capitalize on that opportunity. One of those things being childcare, and especially as a student veteran, the GI Bill, which would allow you to pay for some childcare, it has some childcare supports, but it has restrictions on it that you must use the licensed childcare, you must use this, you must use that, you must preemptively pay for the childcare costs and only afterwards get reimbursed. All of these layers make it difficult for a student veteran to continue through their education, and too often they end up dropping out. So then, as Ali was saying, what can only the levy do? We can create the infrastructure and the supports that provide more flexible opportunities and that inform and educate people on how to access these supports, how to integrate childcare into their platform of going to school and succeeding, and creating, like I said, knowing how to look for quality childcare, how to be your own best informed consumer, and purposefully reach out to those who are experiencing more barriers rather than fewer, because that is the goal of the levy, of creating equity. So the rationale for that is deeply laid into the implementation plan. We've picked out the parts that really help highlight the importance of that to bring really the kernel and the nuggets in here. And as Ali has written here on this slide, they frequently cited trends of having to drop out, and what can be the support there is flexible childcare supports that meet the needs of the students, meets the needs of the children, and really help us to learn from this as a way to keep going forward and improving our infrastructures together, and bringing together multiple strategies and partners and community members who previously may not have known about the opportunities that were there. The child care resources probably didn't know how to connect to a student, didn't know that there are GI supports that are there, so helping folks to use those. And the students didn't know that childcare resources were available. So again, combining arms, coming together, creating a better whole. Ali, you wrote in chat, there's a question.
I was just responding to a question that one of our attendees had about whether or not we were recording the meeting, and yes, we are.
Okay, so I hope I gave a good overlay and balance of coming together there. I'm excited to be working on this. Usually when I'm doing an RFP, I really stay within the veteran silo. This is exciting to be doing something jointly.
Thanks so much, Gretchen. Okay, so the goal of the RFP itself, or the outcome, is that we are hoping to promote the well-being of both the student and their dependents, and to improve the attachment within and long-term success of the family unit. So that's sort of the North Star point where we are trying to get folks to. Primarily, it's to improve a student veteran's ability to remain in school and graduate from his or her post-secondary educational certification or vocational program. And apologies, I should say from their post-secondary educational certification or vocational program. And then there are pieces of this that we know in order to do that, that when we provide childcare that is flexible and supportive and high quality, that it actually helps the whole family unit. We know that childcare can actually change lives. And so we want to be mindful that that is the real outcome that we're looking for. So a bit of background, what we're going to do today is while we review the RFP, I'm not going to go through the entire RFP because you can actually read the pieces in the RFP itself, but I want to draw your attention to one of the more important aspects of it, which is the background section, which talks about and walks through kind of our thinking about where we came to be when we get to the idea of the scope of work. So when we get to the point where we are asking what we are asking of potential contractors, this is what has informed that ask. So we touch on the King County Children and Family Strategy Task Force's work, which is a body of folks that did an incredible amount of community engagement and processes to come to a set of recommendations that have now been transmitted to council and the King County Executive. And so we are informed by the leadership of that group. We talk about the unique needs of student veterans, as Gretchen just outlined. We talk about the access and availability of childcare. We know that there have been significant impacts to childcare, particularly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that what was a crisis before is now become even more of a crisis, and that there are not spots available in the same way that they were. Again, why we're leaning toward flexibility. We talk about the affordability of childcare. I am assuming that for folks in this call, it comes as no surprise that childcare is largely unaffordable for large sections of folks, and that there have been a lot of different amazing leaders in the community doing work to help try and support that. And so we are trying to sort of supplement that work and complement that work through this RFP as well. And then the importance of flexible childcare supports. So when we talk about flexible childcare supports, we're talking about things like licensed and unlicensed care, including family, friend, and neighbor care, family care centers, and then also licensed childcare centers, knowing that the needs of each family could be different. There could be an individual that is in school full-time and wants their child in full-time licensed childcare. And then there are folks who might need support a few days a week for a few hours. And so we want to leave enough flexibility for contractors and for applicants to tell us, how would you be able to support this level of flexibility? So that's outlined in the background section as well. So the general scope of work is to fund an entity to provide student veterans with financial assistance to cover partial costs of flexible and self-identified childcare needs. What you will notice when you go through the scope of work is that even more so than telling you exactly what we need you to do, we're staying silent on some of the things that we are asking of, including what partial costs looks like, and what low income means are two pretty prominent examples of what that is. So the brief overview of the scope of work here is that the awarded entities will be responsible for the financial management and distribution of funds. That funds under this strategy are intended to be used for flexible and supportive services for individual student veterans and their families' needs, to develop a model that is flexible to support the self-determined needs of students, to provide technical assistance to providers, both licensed and unlicensed, on an as-needed basis to support their ability to serve student veterans. We know this is that's a big lift when helping do this kind of resource supports. And then to partner with King County Veterans Program and the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs, Vet Corps programming, which there are 16 Vet Corps locations at different technical and community colleges throughout King County. And so that partnership in tandem with our King County Veterans Program will help with both a referral internal and referral external process. And we want to make sure that folks are aware that that's a vibrant partnership that we are hoping to continue to foster. Gretchen, are there other things about the scope of work that you think are important to note here?
No, I think that we've been thoughtful about hitting the things that are required and those things that are flexible, and creating opportunity for those of you in the community who are knowledgeable about childcare resources, especially, to come in and offer this, knowing that we'll be able to come alongside with some of the veteran connections that you may or may not have.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so another thing, when we talk about what can only VSHSL do, and we think about our racial equity and equity and social justice goals, is we think about what are our focus populations. So the focus populations for this strategy, in addition to being low income student veterans, which I do want to again clarify that there is no definition of low income in the VSHSL implementation plan, and we are not providing a definition of low income either. That there is also a particular emphasis, in addition to those two things, on women of color, first generation college students, single parents, families who are experiencing or are at risk of homelessness, families who are facing other barriers to care and are unable to access other subsidy programs, those who face institutional and historic barriers to education and quality childcare of their choice caused by race and or primary language. And so we want folks to be mindful of the fact that while we have this designated population of low-income student veterans, that there are folks who are within that category that are even further from opportunity. And we want to make sure that we are prioritizing the voices and access for the individuals that are listed in this focus population. And so that will be a piece of what we're hoping folks can respond to in their application as well. So funding. There is up to $400,000 available in funding for the program period of December 1st to 2020 until December 31st, 2021. We do want to be mindful that contracts that are awarded through this RFP may be extended beyond that initial pilot period through the full life of the levy to December 31st, 2023. And if that is the case, the total amount with that extension would be up to $950,000. Our intent is to just contract currently for the up to $400,000 for December 1st, 2020 till December 31st, 2021, but do reserve the right to be able to extend that contract. And there is more information about the available funding and the award amount and timeline in the RFP itself. So eligibility. Eligible applicants must have the ability to meet the following qualifications: to provide supports to individuals, families, and households in obtaining childcare in King County, to have a demonstrated ability to be flexible, and to understand the current conditions that impact the landscape of childcare in King County. So to either have participated in or understand or have knowledge of or be leaders around particularly the work that's been happening recently in respect to COVID-19 and knowing what the landscape of childcare is currently, in addition to having community trust with both providers and individuals seeking childcare that promotes accountability on all ends. So contract requirements, and this again is outlined in the RFP itself, but we're going to touch on briefly here. Evaluation is a big part of this. We want to make sure that folks know that there will be an evaluation component of any of the work that's funded through the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. And you are not required to submit a detailed, fully developed evaluation plan, but make sure that your program model accounts for your anticipated performance measures. So what we mean by that is, when doing a program, think about what success might look like. We are using the results-based accountability framework as a county that says how much, how well, and are people better off? And so think about what that might mean for you in your program as you're writing your application. The data collection and reporting requirements additionally are client level data. We have an engine called CORE, that's Client Outcomes Reporting Engine, that is worked in partnership with our performance measurement evaluation team. And so that will be a big piece of what this is asking, in addition to aggregate and narrative reports as appropriate for program to program. So here is the timeline. The RFP was released on October 12th. Today is the bidders conference, the 20th. Final day for agencies to initiate a request for technical assistance, which we'll be talking about in a moment, is October 26th. And so if you are an agency that qualifies and is interested in using technical assistance, we recommend that you reach out to the providers that are listed on a document called technical assistance that's loaded into ZoomGrants as soon as possible. The final day to submit questions will be November 2nd. So that's a week before the RFP closes. And so if you have questions, again, that are after today's bidders conference and including the ones that were asked at today's bidder conference, they will be typed up and responded to and loaded up into the ZoomGrants portal with a document that says FAQ. And now our landscaping folks are right next to me, so apologies if there's extra noise. The RFP itself is due on November 9th, and that's by 11:59 p.m. on November 9th. Our best intention is to review and rate those applications during the month of November with the intent to notify folks of the award decisions and start contracting in December. So applying, submit proposals by 11:59 p.m. on Monday, November 9th. The complete submittals will include responses to the summary questions, responses to narrative questions, including the organizational equity chart. And again, this is all embedded in the ZoomGrants portal, and a budget. We are asking folks to submit a 13-month budget. Gretchen, do you want to add anything about that piece?
You know, I apologize. I think in Excel, so it's all self-explanatory to me.
No worries, that's great.
But yeah, think about it. You'll see the total amount there, and just think about how would you spend the entirety of the amount that's there, knowing that we're asking that it be spent in 13 months?
Perfect. Thank you so much. And here's a brief overview of the rating criteria. There are more specifics within the RFP itself, but organizational background and experience, the program model, equity and social justice, including the organizational equity chart, which is the foundation of some of the ESJ work that we're asking of folks when applying, budget and fiscal, and data collection and evaluation. So technical assistance. Gretchen, do you want to talk about technical assistance?
One of the things that's exciting about the levy is that we have a specific goal of increasing the capacity of local human service providers, nonprofit providers, helping them get up to speed with best practices and organizational infrastructure, and advance some of the more culturally appropriate programs that are out there who are closest and tied to the communities who need this assistance. So to get there, knowing that the challenges of applying for an RFP can sometimes in itself be the barrier to applying and getting the funding, and then therefore building your capacity to operate. We provide grant writing assistance or technical assistance to help people understand how to submit a proposal, how to use language and narrative and research to demonstrate the efficacy of your proposal. Basically, they won't write your proposal, but they'll help walk you through it to learn how to do it yourself so that it becomes a skill that you have within your agency. It is limited to small organizations, and the definition for that is those who have fewer than 20 FTE. And that means like you could have 35 half-time FTE, and that is going to only come out to be about 17 to 18 FTE. That will qualify. So you need to have fewer than 20 FTE and have an operating budget less than 4 million per fiscal year for your agency. Both of those measures have to be true to qualify. But with that, there are a list of consultants who you can reach out to. It is in the attachment E, and it is your choice which one you will want to work with.
Perfectly said. Thanks, Gretchen. And they are in no particular order too, like Gretchen's saying, you can choose which one you want to work with, listed in the document. ZOOMGRANTS. So all of the RFP materials are posted on ZOOMGRANTS at this link below. In the announcement for this RFP, this link was also provided. If you're interested in finding out about what procurements are currently open, you can also visit our Veteran Seniors Human Services levy page, our King County page, and they will be listing all of the open procurements. So you'll be able to find this link there as well. All applications must be filled out and submitted via ZOOMGRANTS, and questions today and those submitted in writing will be posted as well to ZOOMGRANTS in the library tab, as we've been talking about in an FAQ document. Okay, now is the fun part. Now is time for questions. So if folks do have questions, I'm going to go ahead and allow everyone to talk. And if you don't mind raising your hand, we'll go ahead and call on folks one by one.
I don't know if this is true for others, but my raised hand icon disappeared.
Oh, okay. Well, everyone should be able to talk. And so if for some reason,
got it. While people are gathering their questions, I do have two suggestions that I typically provide during the RFP bidders conferences. One, sometimes when people are responding to the RFP, they want to describe the need and really expound on why this service is needed as a way of demonstrating that they really get it. That's good, and also you don't need to do that this time because the levy has already identified through the community engagement process that this is a need. So you don't have to convince us. That's why we're doing the RFP. What we want to hear is how you would respond to it. So don't waste your precious words because there are word limitations in ZOOMGRANTS. Don't waste your word limits on convincing us for the need. Share how you would respond to it. And then Allie, I'm not sure if you talked a little bit about how COVID has affected this area of service, that there are a lot of childcare programs that are closing. And so therefore, the assistance with helping people find childcare is of a special import right now under this RFP.
Yep, exactly. I think we touched on it briefly, and I'm assuming that folks on the call are probably aware of the deep impacts of COVID on childcare centers. I believe last I heard, there's a significant, about half of the childcare centers had closed, with challenges in potentially reopening if there was not some sort of supports made available to those centers themselves. And so I know there are other efforts that are happening throughout King County to support childcare centers as a whole. And we hope to see that continue. And so, like Gretchen is saying, is that particularly because there is now an even larger dearth of childcare centers, that the supporting folks to find and navigate a center is going to be a cornerstone of any programming that happens through this RFP itself or through this strategy. We'll give folks a few more minutes to hang out and see if any questions arise, but we just want to call your attention to the fact that if you do have questions that come up afterward, or you have colleagues that have questions, they can email them to me. You will receive a generic response that says, due to the procurement processes, I'm unable to answer your question directly, but that it will be posted weekly to the ZoomGrants platform. And it looks like Katie has a question. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you are, if it's acceptable to build in some program development time, or if there's an expectation that the recipients start serving families immediately.
It's a great question. Gretchen, I'm going to have you jump on this too, but I think it's entirely appropriate to build in program time. We also know that what we are asking of providers is something unique. This is a pilot project, and we're intending to continue to use the language of a pilot project because we are asking folks to do something that potentially funders have not allowed for before, particularly in thinking about the flexible supports for both licensed and unlicensed care, and providing that higher level of flexibility to folks who are seeking care. And so, yes, I think that would be entirely appropriate. Gretchen, I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
I would say that it's a yes, with caveats of understanding that the entirety of the project needs to be completed by the end of next year, and that the availability of childcare services will need to align to the time that students need them. So there are a lot of students who will be making their determination now about whether they're going to sign up for winter quarter that starts in January, knowing, have I got childcare figured out? So not to create people to have alarms, but knowing that there will be some folks who might be seeking childcare reimbursement almost as soon as the quarter begins, or that we have a robust outreach plan come the spring quarter so that people can sign up for it, knowing that few people attend summer quarter. So it's mostly, when would your planning and development be done so that it is available to the student veterans who need that, aligned with when quarters and college opportunities, apprenticeships are starting.
Great, thanks, Gretchen. And I think too, to speak to Gretchen's comment about outreach, is that the partnership with KCVP and WDVA Vet Corps are going to be integral in helping to spread the word so that folks are aware that these resources are available. And so that partnership will do a lot of that outreach support as well. Did that answer your question enough, Katie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Other folks? Okay. Well, Gretchen, unless you have something else you'd like to add, with that, we'll go ahead and end today's Bidders Conference. This has been recorded and will be uploaded onto the ZoomGrants platform, including a link to a YouTube video that is this Bidders Conference. And so if your colleagues are interested in viewing this, or they have additional questions, they can find all of that information in the ZoomGrants platform or send me an email. You can also send an email through ZoomGrants as well that I will receive. Gretchen?
Thanks for your attendance.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing to help make sure that childcare centers stay open and that folks have the supports that they need right now. It really is something that should be highly praised. So thank you so much for your time and your leadership in this work. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.